The night was too quiet for a mansion that big. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, as if the world knew something was about to happen. Rain whispered against the tall glass windows, blurring the city lights beyond. Inside that grand house, where every piece of marble and gold screamed wealth, stood a girl, her heart pounding in terror. Her name was Amara. She was only 23, a maid who had seen more pain than peace, more betrayal than love. And that night, she found herself standing at the edge of something she couldn't have imagined even in her worst nightmares. Because in that very house, a man she had come to respect, a man who had once saved her life, was about to walk into a trap, and she was the only one who could stop him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing what's right even when it's dangerous, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us tell more stories that touch the heart and remind the world that compassion still matters. Amara had been working for the Millers for almost a year now. Mr. Andrew Miller, the millionaire tech entrepreneur everyone admired, had a reputation for being humble despite his wealth. He treated everyone in his house with respect, no matter their position. But his wife, Claire, she was a different story. Beautiful, elegant, with eyes that could charm or cut, depending on her mood. Amara had seen both sides. At first, Claire seemed kind, offering her old clothes, asking about her family back in Georgia. But slowly, the kindness turned into commands, the warmth into control. Amara often felt like a ghost in that mansion, unseen, unheard. She kept her head down, did her work, and prayed to survive another day in that cold palace of money. Yet despite the cruelty, she stayed. Because Andrew had once saved her when she was on the streets, homeless and hopeless. He had offered her a job, a home, and dignity, when the world offered her nothing. To her, he wasn't just a boss. He was a reminder that good men still existed. But lately, things had changed. There were arguments, muffled but sharp, between the couple. The glow that once surrounded the Millers' marriage had dimmed, and in the silence, Amara began noticing things. Claire would take late-night phone calls, whispering by the pool. She'd leave suddenly in the afternoons and come back smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't Andrew's. Then, one night, while cleaning the study, Amara found something that froze her blood, a small envelope addressed to Claire, hidden behind a stack of books. Inside were photographs of Andrew with another woman, but the woman was blurred, as if edited. Something wasn't right. The next day, Claire's behavior changed. She was calm, too calm, smiling too easily. She poured wine for Andrew at dinner, laughing in that soft, eerie tone that didn't reach her eyes, and Amara noticed the wine bottle had been opened before. Not by the butler, not by Andrew, only by Claire at midnight while Amara mopped the floor near the kitchen. She overheard voices from the patio. Claire was outside, speaking on the phone. Her tone was low, sharp as glass. "He's leaving tomorrow morning," Claire whispered. "Once he steps outside, it'll look like an accident. The car will explode before he reaches the gate. Yes, I made sure he'll take that car." The mop fell from Amara's hands. The bucket clanged against the marble, echoing like a scream in the night. She didn't care if Claire heard. She ran. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might tear her chest open. She ran up the stairs, down the long hall lined with portraits of the Millers, and stopped in front of Andrew's office door. Her hands trembled as she knocked. Inside, Andrew looked up from his papers, startled. His kind eyes softened when he saw her panic. He started to ask what was wrong, but Amara dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, sir," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please don't go outside tomorrow. Don't take your car. Your wife, she's planning something terrible." Andrew froze. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then confusion, disbelief, and finally horror flickered across his face as Amara told him everything. The phone call, the poisoned wine, the photographs. Every word spilled out between her sobs. At first he didn't want to believe it. Claire was his wife of 10 years. They'd built an empire together, but deep down, something in him already knew. The distance, the lies, the emptiness that had grown between them, he'd been ignoring it all along. The next morning came too soon. Rain had cleared, and sunlight spilled across the mansion like gold on glass. Andrew acted normal, pretending nothing had changed. He kissed Claire's cheek, thanked her for breakfast, and told her he had a meeting downtown. But instead of taking his usual car, he quietly slipped into another one, the older SUV that Amara had begged him to use instead. He drove halfway down the street before the explosion shattered the calm. The sound ripped through the air, sending birds flying in terror. Flames rose behind him where his luxury car had been parked. Neighbors rushed out, shouting. Claire stood on the balcony, her face pale, her scream echoing through the street. But Andrew didn't look back. He knew the truth now. Hours later, police cars and reporters surrounded the estate. Claire tried to play the grieving wife, fainting dramatically when officers arrived. But the evidence came fast. Phone records, payments to a hitman, and those photographs Amara had found, proven fake by the investigators. She was arrested that same evening. As she was led away in handcuffs, her eyes found Amara's. For a moment, the mask dropped, revealing the monster behind the makeup. But Amara didn't flinch. Days passed. The mansion was quieter now, filled not with fear but with healing. Andrew, though broken, was alive. He spent hours sitting by the window, staring at the city, thinking of how close he'd come to losing everything. Not just his life, but his faith in humanity. And in those moments, Amara would quietly bring him tea, reminding him that kindness still existed, even in the darkest corners of life. He once asked her why she risked everything for him, her job, her safety, her future. Amara smiled softly and said, "Because when I had nothing, you gave me a reason to believe people could be good. I couldn't stand by and watch goodness die." From that day on, Andrew refused to let her go. He offered to send her to college, to help her chase her dreams. But Amara didn't want charity. She wanted to earn her way. She worked harder than ever, learning, studying, growing. Slowly, the story of what she did spread. The media called her the girl who saved the millionaire's life. But for her, it wasn't about fame. It was about doing what was right. A year later, Andrew founded a foundation in her name, the Amara Hope Project, dedicated to giving education and shelter to young women who had been abandoned or forgotten by society, just like she once was. Amara became its first director, standing tall in front of cameras, wearing a white dress and the biggest smile of her life. Her voice shook as she gave her first speech. Sometimes the smallest act of courage can save a life, and sometimes that courage begins with love. The crowd applauded, but Andrew, sitting in the front row, couldn't hold back tears. In that moment, he realized that Amara hadn't just saved his life. She had given it new purpose. As the years passed, their bond grew into something sacred, not romantic, but something deeper, a connection built on gratitude, trust, and shared pain. Whenever people asked how two souls from such different worlds became family, Andrew would simply say, "Because she saw me when I was blind." But behind all the success and recognition, Amara never forgot that night. The whisper of rain against the glass, the sound of her own heart screaming as she begged him not to go outside. It haunted her, but it also reminded her of how far she'd come. Because sometimes, life breaks you not to destroy you, but to shape you into the person you were meant to be. And for Amara, that person was strong, fearless, and kind. So whenever she met someone struggling, someone who'd lost hope, she would tell them her story, not as a tragedy, but as proof that courage doesn't come from wealth or power. It comes from love. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that remind the world of faith, hope, and second chances. And before we end, comment below what lesson you learned from Amara's story. Did it remind you of a time you had to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard? We'd love to read your thoughts. Because in a world that often celebrates money and power, it's easy to forget. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a person can do is simply care.